Hello mates, welcome to the West 6 Mixology podcast. I'm Scotty Clark, and our show today is about a velvety smooth, spirit-driven cocktail that puts a Scottish spin on America's most beloved classic, the sophisticated Rob Roy, where bold whiskey meets sweet vermouth in perfect harmony. Picture this, the Waldorf Astoria, late autumn in the 1890s. Gas lamps flickering, the rustle of silk gowns, champagne corks popping like distant fireworks. And somewhere in that glittering chaos, a bartender stands at the mahogany, staring down at a bottle of Scotch whiskey like it's a puzzle wrapped in a riddle, soaked in peat smoke. The Manhattan's already a smash hit. Bourbon, sweet vermouth, bitters, boom, perfection. But tonight there's an operetta premiering down the street. Some Scottish outlaw story, all romance and rebellion. And this bartender, he thinks, what if we took that Manhattan template and made it Scottish? What if we gave it a name that conjured heather and highlands and heroes with claymores? Ladies and gentlemen, that's how you get a Rob Roy. One spirit swap, and suddenly you've got a drink that's lived through Prohibition, 2 world wars, the vodka plague of the 80s, and the craft cocktail renaissance. Still standing, still smooth, still absolutely lethal in the best possible way. The Rob Roy isn't just a Scotch Manhattan, though that's technically accurate, like saying Blade Runner is just a detective movie. It's accurate, but wildly insufficient. The drink was born specifically to celebrate the premiere of an operetta about Robert Roy MacGregor, that red-haired Scottish outlaw who became a folk hero, the Highland Robin Hood. The operetta was massive, running for hundreds of performances, and the cocktail became its liquid ambassador. The Waldorf Astoria was the epicenter of cocktail innovation back then, churning out signature drinks like they were minting currency. And they were, in a way. These cocktails were social capital. Order a Rob Roy fresh off its debut, and you're signaling you're cultured, connected, aware of what's happening in theatre and high society. You're not just drinking, you're performing sophistication. But here's what makes the Rob Roy brilliant from a cocktail architecture standpoint. It proved that the Manhattan template was infinitely adaptable. You've got the basic formula: whiskey, sweet vermouth, bitters. And by simply changing the whiskey type, you create an entirely different personality. Bourbon gives you caramel and vanilla warmth. Rye gives you spice and bite. But Scotch? Scotch gives you malt and mystery. Sometimes a whisper of smoke. Always this deeper, earthier complexity. It's like the difference between a campfire story and a fireside philosophy session. Both are whiskey-driven, but the Rob Roy invites contemplation, where the Manhattan invites conversation. It's the older, slightly more brooding sibling who's read more books and keeps a flask of something peaty in their coat pocket. And the drink survived everything. Prohibition tried to eliminate it, along with every other proper cocktail in America. But it persisted in Canada and Europe, waiting patiently like an exile planning a return. Post-Prohibition, it came back, though bartenders were working with different vermouths, different techniques, sometimes different memories of what the drink even was. The 70s and 80s nearly buried it under an avalanche of vodka sodas and sugary nonsense. But the cocktail renaissance dug it back up, dusted it off, and suddenly bartenders were arguing about whether blended Scotch or single malt was the proper choice. That's a mark of a drink that matters, when people care enough to argue about its soul.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
So what are we actually putting in this glass? Start with 2 ounces of Scotch whiskey. Now here's your first decision point, and it matters more than you'd think. Traditionalists say blended Scotch, something like Famous Grouse or Johnny Walker Black Label. That's what would have been available when the drink was invented, and blended Scotch is smoother, more integrated, designed to play well with others. It's a team player. Single malt, on the other hand, is more of a soloist. Use a Highland or Speyside expression if you go that route. Something with character, but not so peaty it hijacks the entire drink. Avoid Islay malts unless you specifically want a Rob Roy that tastes like a campfire having an existential crisis. Not wrong exactly, just very, very specific. Next, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. And here's where home bartenders usually stumble. They use vermouth that's been sitting open on a shelf for 6 months, slowly transforming into something between cough syrup and regret. Vermouth is wine, fortified and botanical infused, but still wine. It oxidizes, it goes off. Once you open that bottle, it lives in the fridge, and you've got maybe 3 to 4 weeks before it starts tasting like bad decisions. Use fresh vermouth, or don't bother making the drink. Carpano Antica formula is rich and vanilla forward, almost decadent. Cocchi Vermouth di Torino is more traditional, balanced, classic. Dolan Rouge is lighter, lets the Scotch shine more. Pick your vermouth based on how much you want it to assert itself. Then 2 to 3 dashes of Angostura bitters. People forget the bitters. Don't be those people. Bitters are like salt in cooking, a tiny amount that somehow makes everything else taste more like itself. Angostura brings warm spice, a touch of orange peel, gentian bitterness, and this indefinable something that ties the whole drink together. Without it, you've got Scotch and vermouth sitting next to each other, making awkward small talk. With it, you've got integration, harmony, a cocktail that tastes like one coherent thought instead of a committee meeting. Now, the making. This is a stirred drink, not shaken, never shaken. I know pop culture has convinced everyone that shaking is inherently cooler, more dramatic, more bartender looking. And sure, it looks great. But shaking aerates the drink, creates tiny bubbles, clouds it up, and over-dilutes it. Stirring gives you controlled dilution, precise chilling, and that silky, viscous texture that makes a properly made stirred cocktail feel like luxury in a glass. Fill your mixing glass 2/3 with large, hard, cold ice cubes. Add your Scotch, vermouth, and bitters. Insert a bar spoon with the back of the spoon against the glass and stir smoothly in one direction for 30 to 45 seconds. You're not trying to whip it into a frenzy, you're coaxing it into cooperation. The ice should move as a unified mass, almost silent. If it sounds like you're stirring gravel, you're doing it wrong. What's happening during that stir is crucial. The drink is chilling down to about 23 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to be bracing, but not so cold it numbs your palate. And it's diluting by about 20 to 25% by volume. That dilution isn't weakness, it's alchemy. Water breaks down the alcohol's grip on your taste receptors, lets aromatic compounds volatilize and reach your nose, softens the edges without dulling the blade. Too little dilution, and the drink's harsh, closed off, boozy in a bad way. Too much, and it's weak, watery, forgettable. The sweet spot is that silky, slightly grippy texture that makes you want to hold it in your mouth for a second before swallowing, just to appreciate what's happening. Strain it into a chilled cocktail glass, coupe or martini, your call, though coupes are having a moment, and they're more historically accurate anyway. The glass needs to be properly chilled. If you serve this in a warm glass, you've just undone all your careful temperature work, and the drink will taste thin and sad within 30 seconds. Garnish traditionally with a maraschino cherry, not the neon red supermarket abominations, but a proper Luxardo cherry, dark and complex and preserved in actual cherry syrup. Drop it in the drink. Alternatively, some bartenders prefer a lemon twist expressed over the surface to release those citrus oils, then either dropped in or draped over the rim. The cherry adds subtle almond sweetness and looks classic. The lemon adds aromatic lift and cuts through richness. Both work. Choose based on whether you want the drink sweeter or brighter.
Oh, hey, friend. Do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast, too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
Of course, the Rob Roy spawned variations because that's what good cocktails do. They become templates for exploration. The dry Rob Roy swaps sweet vermouth for dry, creating something crisper, more astringent, more aggressively Scotch forward. The perfect Rob Roy uses equal parts sweet and dry vermouth, landing somewhere in between, complex, balanced, more botanical. There's the Bobby Burns, which adds a bar spoon of Benedictine to the standard recipe, turning it richer and slightly sweeter, more dessert adjacent. And then bartenders keep riffing, different bitters, different scotches, barrel-aged versions, variations with Amaro instead of vermouth. The drink's sturdy enough to handle experimentation, but specific enough that you can't stray too far before it stops being recognizably itself. The experience of drinking a well-made Rob Roy is like this. The first thing you notice is the aroma, that lemon oil if you went with the twist, or the subtle almond from the cherry. But underneath it all, malt and botanical complexity, warm spices, maybe a hint of smoke depending on your Scotch. The first sip is cold and silky, coating your palate with integrated flavours that don't announce themselves in stages, but arrive as a complete thought. There's the whiskey's malty sweetness and oak tannins, the vermouth's herbal wine-like depth, the bitters tying it together with aromatic spice. It's not as bold as drinking Scotch neat, but it's not soft either, just rounded, sophisticated, contemplative. The finish lingers, mostly whiskey but with echoes of everything else, warming as it goes down, inviting the next sip before you fully process the last. This is a cold weather drink, a holiday drink, a drink for when you want something substantial without being aggressive. It's perfect before dinner, though rich enough it could almost be after dinner. It's the drink you order when you want the bartender to know you know what you're doing, when you want something classic without being obvious. The Manhattan gets more attention, sure, but the Rob Roy has that quiet confidence of something that doesn't need to shout to command respect. It's been around for well over a century, survived every trend and backlash, and it's still here because the fundamentals are just right. Scotch and sweet vermouth and bitters shouldn't work as well as they do, but somehow they create something greater than the sum of parts, something that makes you want to sit down, slow down, and actually taste what you're drinking. Make yourself a Rob Roy tonight, chill the glass properly, use fresh vermouth, stir it with intention, and give it the attention it deserves. You're not just mixing Scotch and vermouth, you're participating in something that connects back to gaslit bars and operetta premieres, to the golden age of cocktails, to every person who's ever stood at a mahogany bar and asked for something smooth, something strong, something that tastes like Scotland, filtered through Manhattan sophistication. And when you take that first sip, cold and silky and perfectly balanced, you'll understand why some drinks earn the title of classic and never let it go. All right, thank you for joining us for the West 6 podcast. Drink responsibly, and if you had a good time, press follow and rate our show 5 stars. This is Scotty signing off. May your troubles be lighter than your cocktails.
Grep News. Tamez.